All right, the preseason coaches poll is out, and South Carolina is not in it. However, are they ranked number one in terms of best fan base in all of college sports? The numbers might show they are. Locked On Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. It is great to have you along. It is August 6th when you were getting this, Tuesday morning, and we are fired up for today's show. Want to say, first off, thank you so much for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts on a daily basis, as well as YouTube as well. So, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is a fun one that is brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. You guys have heard me brag about them a lot this summer. The summer is winding down. The sports are about to start sporting like we want them to again. College football season's coming up. We got things to bet on again. Very, very excited about that. Make sure you head on over to FanDuel because they're hooking up customers, all summer long, every single day. If they boost or a bonus daily, literally every single day. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Let's get started with the show while we're at it. I appreciate you guys being here. I hope you're having a fantastic start to your week. A couple of things to get to. Kind of a slow news day in terms of fall camp. Exciting part for this week, we are going to get into actually full pads. So you're going to hear pads cracking over there near the fairgrounds. Pretty pumped about that. Very excited. And the other part is this. So the coaches poll came out today and the top 25 was released. And before we get into it, because I'm going to blast it for a minute, just how stupid I think some of these preseason polls really are. And it's not just because South Carolina didn't make it. Spoiler alert, they did not. But I'm going to put it on blast a little bit because I'm sick of hearing about it with its so much importance. And I'm going to break down and tell you why it's not that great. But before we do, I want to talk about this. They didn't make South Carolina did not make the preseason top 25. There's another list that came out, and I saw it on Twitter, so you know it's true. The dude that posted it is a phenomenal follow, by the way. I'm sure a lot of you probably do already follow him. And I'll bring it up real quick right now. General Will, Gamecock Will 69. Very nice. For real, phenomenal follow on Twitter. And a big lover of the Gamecocks. But he posted this the other day, and he was talking about, or I guess yesterday, the attendance numbers came out for South Carolina across the board in all sports, right? Or all the major sports. I'm not saying this to like appease you guys or like play to and pander to the fan base. The numbers are staggering with how positive they are in favor of what you guys have done and how much y'all have shown up for this program, which I was thinking about this the other day as somebody that used to cover Alabama really closely and like when I first started coming up and covering the SEC, especially when they were in their little dominant run. I hear about Auburn all the time. Oh, it's just different down there. Jordan Hare it's unlike any place you've ever been. Keep in mind, Auburn's also 0-2 the last two times they've been to Williams-Brice. And I kind of alluded to this a while back. I was like, is Williams-Brice, and they had the chance to be Jordan Hare 2.0, not from like a crazy juju type way. And some of the crazy stuff we've seen that's happened in Jordan Hare over the years. But all I ever hear about with Auburn, especially coming off of 3 straight losing seasons, oh my gosh, it's just different down there. No matter what the record is, the fans show up and they care about Auburn and blah, blah, blah. Why the hell does South Carolina not get any recognition over this? And listen, I'm sure I'm kind of just beating a dead horse because I brought it before. And I'm new to covering this specific team this closely, right? Like I've lived in Lexington, I've lived in Columbia, I lived off everywhere over there. I lived off the Less Line after where the old behind where the old Monterey's was, out past the river, near downtown, right, literally across the river from where the baseball stadium is. I lived off Main Street. I lived off B Avenue. Like my family's lived here a long time. We've moved all over. I've followed the program, a decent amount. I've never covered it this closely. It just seems so stupid at this point that the narrative about South Carolina is not at least larger in terms of how great this fan base is and the way they show up. I remember hearing Lou Holtz talk about this years ago and saying they went 0-11 right? Some of y'all are old like me, right? And you remember the 0-11 season. You don't want to, but you remember the 0-11 season. And you also remember the other stat that came out from that year, which was you sold out every game. That doesn't effing happen anywhere else. And I'm going to get a little bit fired up over it, but it's like, I'm tired of not hearing this be the narrative about this university and this fan base. Sure, there's a long list of irrational fans like any other fan base has. But like, I feel like this may sound stupid. I'm starting to get it a little bit in terms of like, you may not have had Will Muschamp might not have shown up as much as you wanted him to throughout his tenure here. You might question some of the things that Ray Tanner did. You might maybe you want to see Kingston fired earlier in his career and his tenure as the head baseball coach. But I kind of understand why, because if they haven't shown up, that didn't stop the fan base from doing it. And these are the actual numbers in terms of overall in the country where your attendance ranks per sport. Okay, women's basketball first, men's soccer first. I believe that's club. I could be wrong, but first. Women's soccer first. Baseball 6th. Softball 14th. Football 16th. Men's basketball 21st. Now I'm going to tell you where you finished ranked there in terms on a national scale. And some of these, like I said, men's soccer, I believe you finished 21st. I think it was women's soccer was 21st. Men's soccer unranked. Baseball unranked, softball unranked, women's basketball obviously first, men's basketball 24th, right? Outside of women's basketball so far and everything I told you, you finished on the field or on the court lower by a lot in most cases than where your attendance was. Football 16th highest attendance. You finished in the CBS poll last year 72nd. It's a tremendous job. It's a tremendous job, and it is. I hear about it about Auburn all the time, and maybe it's because they have a richer tradition, and they've been in more, like they've been to the postseason more, they've been ranked more, whatever. But I'm just tired of not hearing this be the narrative when we talk about South Carolina. When you talk about South Carolina, so much of the opening conversation is something negative, or they're the butt of the joke, or what. That is. This should be the start of the conversation, and not just of South Carolina fans, but nationally, this should be the conversation. And it pisses me off that it's not. And this may sound stupid, or it may sound like I'm, beating a dead horse. This is because this is stuff you already know. It's stuff that you already know. And so I apologize if I'm late to the game on it. Like I said, I haven't covered this team this closely before, despite covering the SEC in general for about a decade now. And we're not allowed to cuss on this show, okay? We have the other podcast that I do where we are allowed to cuss, and that is much more unfiltered, uncensored situation than this one. But if I could cuss, there are some 4-letter words that would be flying out of my effing mouth right now, because it's just ridiculous to me. Let me go through this again. Women's basketball, first in the country. Men's soccer, first. You're averaging over 4,000 fans at each one. Women's soccer, first. Baseball, 6th. Softball, 14th. Football, 16th. Men's basketball, 21st. And let's also be very clear about this. Like the baseball one says, that's like you get 6 because you're averaging over 7,000 fans per game. That's probably around halfway, or like mid-tier in the SEC. I mean, I should look up the numbers, and I'll promise I will later. I know LSU, I know Mississippi State. Like South Carolina was ahead of the curve on building what I would refer to as a minor league park atmosphere and accommodations and like amenities and all that kind of stuff. They were ahead of the curve on that. Now a lot of the SEC does that, right? That's just like where we are now with those types of stadiums that are being built and ballparks that are being built. But it's just amazing to me that kind of stuff isn't talked about more. And it just, like I said, it pisses me off. I've heard about it you heard it all weekend, man. You heard it all weekend with Man U and Liverpool being here. And it's like this. We've never seen anything like this. Remember when Darude was here last year and played Sandstorm live? And he was just like, what the hell is this? Like, I've never seen anything like this. it's a testament to you guys. I can't wait to see it firsthand this fall. Hopefully, I'll be seeing some of it from the press box because I have. There's only so much dry fit I can put on my body to withstand the heat in Colombia. But I mean, it's just it's tremendous job by you guys, and that's the last thing I'll say on it. And I appreciate you letting me go on the soapbox. I wanted to open with the show because I just, that's something usually I originally had in my notes to put later in the episode, and just, it's because it's not like it's groundbreaking or something that's news. It's also Gamecock Will. Maybe it's not even like I'm sure these are actual factual numbers, but it was eye-opening to me, and I appreciate you letting me get that off my chest. Up next, as we continue the show on our Tuesday, August 6th episode, we are going to talk about the college football coaches poll that was released. We're also going to get into a little bit more in terms of fall camp updates and some things like that are going on. I've dropped my pencil, which is obviously very integral to the show itself. But make sure you stick around for that. Before we do, I want to get back into this real quick and tell you about our good friends over there at FanDuel. Man, we are getting closer and closer and closer. And we've made it through the doldrums. We've made it through the hard part, right? Like we've made it through the hard part of summer where it's like, there's nothing really there's not as much stuff to watch. I was watching ESPN Ocho the other day and was watching the corgi racing at 12:30. And that's just because I have a corgi and they're adorable as blank. But there's just not a ton of sports. The sports aren't sporting like we want them to, but in about 3 weeks they are. And I'm very excited to, emotionally and financially invest myself into some very fun weekends, and we will do so with the help of our good friends at FanDuel. You don't have to wait necessarily because FanDuel has been there for you all summer long. This summer, they are hooking up all customers. They boost their bonus literally every single day. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. There's a boost or a bonus every single opportunity you look. And like I said, literally every single day as well. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Should be a lot of fun this upcoming season. You can bet on, season totals. You can bet on props for different players, not just around South Carolina, but also around the SEC and the country, as well as plenty of other stuff as well. They have you covered with all of your betting needs. Head to FanDuel.com today to get started. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, make sure you stick around. We will be right back, guys, on Locked On Gamecocks. All right, welcome back in, guys. I appreciate you joining us along and letting me get that soapbox and rant off my chest. Very excited as we get closer and closer. Some of the stuff that happens when we get closer and closer. The coaches poll, for instance, was released today, and we're going to get into that in a second. Before we do, I appreciate you guys, like I said, listening, not just to my soapbox and rants and stuff like that, but also to this podcast each and every day. Shout out again to our everydayers from Locked On Gamecocks. We appreciate that. But after you're done listening to your first listen, make sure you go listen to your second and even third listen. Go check out our good friend Chris Gordy and Locked On SEC. They do a great job there. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On College Football podcast as well with Spencer McLaughlin, who does an incredible job and gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season, the transfer portal, NIL, the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment as well, and the expanded college football playoff. We get to go to 12 teams this year and much, much more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so I want to get into this. We are talking about the coaches poll that was released, and this may come off as a little bit whiny, is what I'm about to say. The coaches poll is released. I get excited about it, but I also am like, okay, let's be honest about what the coaches poll is, because I love that we get to have something to talk about. There's a lot of people that think that rankings are kind of stupid until a couple weeks into the season. Like we tend to overrank teams. Looking at you, Texas A&M, as the season goes on, but looking at some of the teams that have come out in this year's preseason coaches poll, I think there's a pretty decent job that was done. I think there's some things you probably overlooked as well as with any ranking, right? It happens in the AP poll. It happens in coaches poll all the time. Here's my issue with the coaches poll, okay? And then I'll get into the actual rankings. My issue with the coaches poll is this. Your job as a coach is to coach your team. Sure, you're going to scout. other teams. But Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning and Ryan Day and all these other guys, they're not watching college football and consuming college football like us. They are not getting up at, well, I don't know what time y'all are getting up. Some of y'all might have kids and might have like actual, things to do on Saturday mornings. For me, work-wise, that is I will probably get up around 7:30 or 8 just out of excitement, watch game day at 9. Then I'm watching college football until 2, like 1 a.m. probably, right? We don't have Pac-12 after dark anymore, but I'm watching it late into the night. College football coaches aren't doing that. You are going through your game plan. You are getting ready for the game. You are talking to recruits. Then you are coaching your game. When you're done, you're talking to the media. You're again talking to recruits if you're at home at least, and going through stuff like that. Then you're traveling. If you're on the road, you're traveling home. Like the idea that they're just sitting here and they have a pulse or finger on the pulse of who the top 25 coach or teams really are is kind of ridiculous. And I'm glad they do it. I also didn't know this until today. We were talking about it on the other podcast on Fourth and Wrong. I didn't know that it's not every single coach. It's like a few that are chosen. I think this year for the SEC, off the top of my head that I remember, Clark Lee is one. Mike Elko is one. Mark Stoops is one. Kirby Smart, Kalen DeBoer. I believe there's one or two more that I'm forgetting. Beamer's not one of them. But it's at least 5 from this conference that have a say in this vote. It feels like there's room for this to be a little bit more skewed than even the AP poll and some biases. And honestly, it's just not, this word carries a negative connotation, but the ignorance, because it's like, you're not going to be watching all those games. I say all that to say this. No, South Carolina did not make the preseason top 25. Here are the teams that did. Let me pull this up real quick. And I can tell you that right now, the SEC teams that made it, Georgia was number 1. Then it was Ohio State. Followed by then Oregon, Texas at 4, Bama at 5, Ole Miss at 6. I think Notre Dame was 7. Penn State was 9. I think Florida State was 10. I forgot who 8 was. I can look it up here in a second. But like I said, from the SEC, Georgia 1, Texas 4, Bama 5, Ole Miss 6, Mizzou 11, LSU 12, Tennessee 15, Oklahoma 16, A&M 20. Okay. Now, off the top, do I have a problem with any of these? I think 4 and 5, I think, are a little bit inflated with Texas and Bama, but Texas has an easy schedule, so they'll be up there. I'm surprised that Mizzou is outside of the top 10. With all the hype you have going in there, maybe the coaches are also kind of aware that they lost 6 players to the draft, which is the most they've had in years, so it kind of makes sense. I think Ole Miss and Mizzou need to be attached to the hip and be right next to each other. LSU and Tennessee, I would switch those 12 and 15. I don't think LSU has the upside this year that Tennessee has, especially with the schedule they have. Then you have Oklahoma, who's 16. A&M is at 20. I'm not gonna crap on A&M today because I'm gonna do it so much during the season and all their weird finger guns and milkmaid uniforms and all that kind of stuff. I think they have a chance to be good. 20 with a first-year head coach and losing 30-plus players to the portal seems aggressive and cavalier for an optimism standpoint, but that's just me. Now, here's the thing: if you're South Carolina and you're looking at this, and you're like, all right, well, like, where are we? Because Brad Crawford, I feel like I quote Brad Crawford every single day on here, and I'm pulling up the rankings here, hopefully, from 247, the coaches poll. He did a overrated, underrated thing, and in the first glance, what I keep looking at is, okay, if I'm looking at this, you don't have Georgia, you don't have Texas, and you don't have who else on that schedule listed there early. Like there's Tennessee. So you dodge a couple of those. But man, if there's 9 teams in the SEC, you definitely get Bama, who's 5th. You get Ole Miss, who's 6th. You get Missouri, who's 11th. You get LSU, who's 12th. And you get OU, who's 16th. And you get A&M, who's 20th. That is not easy by any means. But like I've said 1,000 times, the schedule is the schedule. And it's not going to be a shock for any South Carolina fan, player, or person, a part of that staff and program that's going to be, oh no, we got to play a tough schedule. You play a tough schedule every year. Move on. Like I don't think they are as concerned about that. I think that is viewed more so as like a chip on the shoulder that we weren't there, and let's go shock the world. The other part of this too, you've heard me talk about this a ton. You go on the road against OU and you go on the road against Bama, right? But you get Mizzou at home, you get LSU at home, and you get Ole Miss at home. I will bet any amount of my girlfriend's money. She does really well for herself. Shout out to Allie. Jokingly, but I would bet any amount of money they're going to get one of those guys. I know you're saying you got 3 in the top 11. That's a tough schedule. South Carolina will beat one of those 3 teams, at least. Mark my words right now. South Carolina will beat one of those teams. Ole Miss, LSU, Missouri. Like, could not be more confident on it. Now, going back to the overall rankings, Michigan at 8. That is ridiculous. I know they just won the national championship. They should probably be propped up there just because of it. You lost over half your coaching staff. You're about to get absolutely obliterated by the NCAA because you were knowingly cheating. And then you talk about the fact that you lost 13 players to the NFL draft. Michigan has not recruited inside of the top 15 on a national level consistently at all. They haven't recruited top 10 classes on a consistent basis in years. And even after winning a national championship, I think they finished last year like at 16 or 17 in the national rankings. Like that, they are in for a rude awakening this year. Penn State at 9, like I said, Florida State at 10, Missouri, LSU 11, 12. Like you have Utah at 13, Clemson at 14. Clemson finished 6th in the ACC last year. 6th. You lost Will Howard, who is the production that he had and the amount they used him on their offense was Derrick Henry high school levels at times. I don't care how that sounds. Like he was the well and they went to it all the time. 14 seems high for them. Oklahoma at 16, like I said, Kansas State 17, Oklahoma State at 18. That's way too low, by the way. Miami at 19, way too low. And then you close out the top 25 with A&M at 20, and then, like I said, Arizona, NC State, USC, Kansas, and Iowa. When you look at the teams that are overrated, Brad Crawford had Michigan, he had Clemson, and I forgot the other one that he had that was overrated. Underrated, he had OU. Which I agree with. Underrated, he had Tennessee. You dodged Tennessee this year. I guess here's a point as it matters and is it matters in terms of South Carolina, right? No, you weren't ranked in the top 25. Okay, so preseason, this is a program that's only been ranked in the preseason. This is on the AP poll, but 6 times in the past 35 years. Now, you finished ranked higher, like more times than that, by the way. You only gone into the season, though, ranked 6 times in 35 years. Again, you finished ranked more times than that. During the season, during those 35 years, you were ranked 19 of them at some point during the season, including being ranked in the top 10 7 different times, right? But it's been about 10 years since you were ranked in the preseason top 25. I'm looking at it right now in the AP poll, right? This is the 10th year that you have not been ranked preseason going in. There was a span, obviously, from 2011, 12, 13, and 14. You were ranked in the top 10 3 of those years going into the season, and you were ranked 12th in 2011. Now, 3 of those 4 years, you finished ranked higher. My point, I guess, is this. If you've only been ranked in the preseason 6 times in 35 years, but you ended up at some point being ranked during the season, 19 of them, 3 times the amount, and you also finished ranked more times than you were unranked going into this, or you finished ranked more times than you started in the preseason ranked. I guess it just goes back to another thing where it's like, yeah, I guess you just expect it at this point. I mean, hell, man, they went 9-4. They went 9-4 in 2017 and finished unranked. That's in the SEC. That's tough to do. That's tough to do. I don't think it's a huge thing to worry about by any means. Also, the AP poll still has come out, and the other thing too is the only poll that really matters towards the end is the CFP poll. But you have a chance at several stops in the schedule to make an upset on a national stage, where again, you don't get Tennessee, you don't get Georgia. I wish you got Florida, but you don't play any of those two teams. Your schedule is still stacked, but you get 3 top 11 teams coming into Williams-Brice, and then you get road games at OU. I think you get one at A&M. You get one against Bama. You get one against Clemson. You got 7 teams on there at least that are preseason top 25. Go out and beat somebody, and I think they will. But I just this whole thing. I guess I was excited because it's like, oh, we're chomping at the bit. We're getting close to the season, and you're all pumped up for preseason rankings. You weren't ranked, but it's like you never are. Then almost every single season, you find yourself in the top 25. So. There's not just saying this again as a placating to the fan base or pandering or whatever, or anything like that. But like, it is, who cares? Right. Like, and again, the rankings at the end of the season matter more, no matter what. And what you do on the field matter no matter, like, more than any of that, no matter what. But shockingly, the coaches who don't watch your games did not rank you in the top 25. We move on. Who cares? Anyway, so that is all for the Coaches Poll. I've had some interesting stuff. I will get more into it as the season goes on and talk a little bit more about, like, outside the SEC, just some of the spots I think that where you're going to have some good teams. I am high on Miami. I think they're going to be good. I'm very high on Oklahoma State as well. The Big 12 will be interesting because you're probably going to have a winner get a first round bye into the playoff because he's an automatic bid. And that will be a top 4 seed because it's a Power 4 conference that'll probably end up with a 9-3 or 10-2 record. So you'll like if you think about this, if it played out the way it did last year in the SEC where Bama beat Georgia, you would have a Georgia team who's 12-1, probably ranked 5th or worse, right? Theoretically behind like a 9-3 Kansas State team who got a first round bye and a top 4 seed, clinched home field advantage because they won their conference. Just some more of the flaws that are in college football, but it's one of the things of why we love it so much. I'll tell you what else we love, and that's camp updates, which we are going to get to at the end of the show, finishing out this Tuesday, August 6th episode. Before we do, I want to talk to you about our good friends at eBay Motors. You guys have heard me talk about them a lot. And I'll tell you what, pat on the back, I talked about them yesterday without making a single Fast and Furious reference, which I watched 2 of them this weekend. No big deal. Good for me. Passion, drive, and patience. It is the formula for winning championships. It is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. I'm talking superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. Night and day, 24/7, 365 days a year. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP, bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, but eBay Motors and eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, make sure you stick around. We will close out today's show and put a bow on this whole episode, which has really just turned into me ranting and raving and doing all those sorts of things. So stick around for the third part of the show. We'll talk about some camp updates and all that good stuff as well. We'll talk to you then. All right, guys, we are back. Let's put a bow on today's show, like I said, and talk about this. So listen, some of the stuff that has come out on the first 3 days of camp, nothing groundbreaking. I don't know why I thought it would. Probably just thinking, and I'm just very excited about it. But I'm going to give you some news and notes and things we've heard that are going around camp right now. Listen, told you a couple things that you had very few limited injuries. I think you had about 4 people in non-contact or in some sort of contact limiting, jersey or whatnot. You had a couple people with the flu that were out. The flu is something that has been going around here, and like I said, in Lexington, obviously in Columbia as well. So that's just stuff you're just fighting for or fighting through to get through in camp. Now, here's the other part too. So we've been talking about this all offseason, and I looked over here at our friends at Big Spur and covering it, and they seem to agree in the same thing. We're talking about the offensive line, how it's starting to really become a thing in terms of like from the media and what we're being able to see, even though the practice has been limited, but talking to coaches, talking to players, and then again, what we're able to see in the limited viewing times, the offensive line could be a strength of this team, which is awesome because it's something you've been wanting to see for a while, but you're finally starting to add some quality depth. Now, up until this point, two players in the offensive line that have stood out apparently are transfers. Torricelli Simpkins III. If I got that right, I will retire today. If I got that name pronunciation right, we are back, baby. And then Kamar Bell as well. So you had Simpkins who was spotted at center, and I honestly he was working with closely with Robbie Ashford. The Ashford thing is nothing really to look at because it was with in a situation where he was just getting reps. Lenore Sellers is by all means the starter still. He has looked good in camp so far. But that's just added depth to the offensive line. And here's the other thing too. Like Simpkins playing at center, these are also guys that are veterans that come in from the portal that are going to be moved along. I think this is something we're going to see, and I'm really excited to see it, which is it's not which are the best 5, like your top 5 offensive linemen, rank them and put them out there at tackle, guard, center to guard, tackle. No, like which 5 fit the best for this offensive line going into the season. I think you're going to see them have some moving parts and figure out what, getting guys also reps at different positions, because in this league especially, and in this position unit, because you've added depth, but it's not like you're super, super deep. You want to make sure you have guys that can play multiple positions so you have depth in case of injury, all those kind of things. It is a grueling season, especially for an offensive lineman. So that is one thing too. I think you will find some guys with some versatility in there, which I love and cannot wait to see. Like I said, no question marks for the North Sellers. Here's the other thing too. The most impressive performers they've said so far, the people that have stood out at the receivers position, Vandravius Jacobs. They said they said he'll be a serious contender to start if he continues to have the kind of camp that he's had through the first several days. Jacobs is, this is not a huge recruit. It's not a huge body. It is a 6 foot, 175-pound kid that is in his first year in the program. He's like the 715th ranked player in the country coming out of high school. This is not a, I keep referencing Auburn, but like a Cam Coleman situation, Perry Thompson, Ryan Williams of there at Bama, all these, I'm like 5-star guys, right? So tremendous job from him to stand out this early. And let's also bring up the fact that, guys, this is something that is one of the exciting parts of having this position unit be this wide open, because you don't have anyone coming back. You got no production coming back. Like your 2 biggest pass catchers from a production standpoint are Doty and how am I drawing a blank on this? Harbor. Wow. 13 receptions and 12 receptions. So there is so much room for someone to go up and take a starting job or take some significant playing time. Very excited to see this. And I'll tell you what, I think this unit has a chance in the future, especially, to be a lot like what we've talked about with the secondary and the offensive line. Maybe something that's not a huge strength right now, but I feel like in a couple of years, you're going to look up and be like, damn, that's a unit that they have brought in some really good skill guys. You look at the recruiting class, all the 4-stars they're bringing in. At some point, you do expect Harbor to take the next step, I would think. You got Mazio Bennett, you get Jared Brown, Tyshawn Russell, other people that are being mentioned. But there are some really good players, and it seems like you're in the running for a couple more 4-stars. This, I think, is going to be a unit when you look down the road, maybe next year or even the year after, you're going to have some really, really good depth there and some significant players and playmakers in that area. So That's pretty much it. That's the main stuff we're heard. I want to get into later this week. We're going to continue to talk about fall camp. Like I said, pretty limited so far. We're counting on dates till you get your first scrimmages and all that kind of stuff. And we are a little over 2.5 weeks out from week 0. So it is getting real, and it's getting here real quick. So very excited about that. Make sure you are tuning into the shows this week. We are going to also rank the schedule and the teams on it from easiest to hardest. We're going to slander Clemson a little bit more this week. We'll do a lot of stuff. I'll probably get on the soapbox and rant and rave. Regardless, really appreciate you guys. Hope you have a phenomenal Tuesday. And that's all. Make sure you're following along with us on social media. Follow me, Vernon Funquist CFB, and Locked On SC as well on our Twitter and social media. So before we go, just want to remind you one more time that if you are not already, make sure after listening to our Locked On Gamecocks episode and your first listen, make sure your second listen is with our good friends over there at Locked On College Football. Listen, go check it out as soon as you get done with listening to this one. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description. You don't even need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have an awesome Tuesday, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.